Hey, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Today I'll be showing you my method on how I bleach my knots, and I hope this method can help you as well. And today we're using a frontal, but this method also works for the closure. So I'm just using my Gots to Be glue spray, Gots to Be spray, and I'm just spraying my frontal here just to push those baby hairs in place to get those out of the way, just to keep from bleaching those, because you don't want to have to go in and fix those after. Next, I'll be going in with my comb and just combing those baby hairs out of the way with a combination of spraying back and forth, spraying and combing, just until those baby hairs are out of the way like I like them to be. And you can also use a brush. I like to use a comb sometimes, and sometimes I like to use a brush. They both do the job. But for this particular video, I'm just using the comb, and you'll see me just going back and forth until I get those baby hairs out of the way. And after I do that, I just go in with my little handy dandy blow dryer and get those hairs blown out of the way, and also dried into place so they don't move when I go ahead and add the lightening powder. After that is done, you'll see that my baby hairs are out of the way and dried, so I'll just turn it on the opposite side to get it prepped and ready to add the bleach. And I just go from corner to corner and top to bottom, however, and I just apply it really lightly. But first, I'll just show you the products we're going to use today. I like to use my whisk and my mixing bowl, and I also like to use a scale. And I think this will help me explain to you all how I calculate or measure my bleaching powder and developer. And so you'll see here how I do this. And of course, you know that when you add the bowl to the scale, it's going to add weight. So once you add the bowl, the empty bowl, of course, you're going to zero out the scale before you add the powder so you can get an accurate measurement. Now I'm going in with my BW2 powder and my BlondeMe 30 volume developer. And you can pretty much use any 30 volume developer, but I typically use only the BW2 powder when I'm bleaching my knots. It just works really well for me. And you will see me go in with 2 parts of the BW2 powder and 1 part developer. For the example of this video, when I weigh the BW2 powder, you're going to see that I get a weight of 18 grams, and then you'll see me go in and measure the developer after I clear the scale out from the powder, and I'll get 9 grams. So after I do that, you'll see me go in like now and use my whisk, and I'll just whisk those ingredients together. And I always like to start off with 2-part bleach powder and 1 part developer, and then I'll just add more developer if I need to, because I don't want it to be too runny. You never want your developer to be your mixture to be too runny, because it would seep through the lace and create over bleaching. And I'm just mixing here with my little plastic whisk, and you'll see me put the bowl back on the scale, and I'll zero out the scale, and you'll see me go in and add that 2nd part of developer, which will create a 2-part bleaching powder and a 2-part developer evenly. And that will give us the correct measurements and mixture that we would need to apply to our frontal. And so you don't have to go back and check the measurements. Remember, we did the 9 grams. So what I did was added just another 9 grams of the developer, which gave us altogether 18 grams of bleaching powder and 18 grams of developer. And if you want to, you can just do 2 parts developer and 2 parts bleaching powder from the beginning. But sometimes, depending on the developer you use, that may be too much. You may only need one part developer and 2 parts of the BW2 powder. But for this particular developer I used, it's more of like a creamy consistency instead of a liquid consistency. So I needed even parts for both. And I'm just going in and mixing everything together, and as you can see, it's coming out to my liking. And I just like to go in with my little plastic spatula here, and as you can see, it's not falling off of the spatula, which means it's a really good consistency, which is how we like it to be. And now we're just going in and applying that mixture to our frontal, and you want to use very light pressure. And I like to use this spatula. A lot of people like to use like a butter knife, but I find that this spatula works just like the butter knife, so it's really good with the applying the mixture on the frontal or the closure. So I'm just going in with light pressure here and just applying that from top to bottom. So I'll just let you watch. And now I'm just going in and applying a little more of the lightener to the front of my frontal, and I like to do this after I put the foil under the frontal or the closure, just to make sure I don't get anything on the surface that the frontal or the closure is sitting on, because sometimes that lightener can get on the surface and stain the surfaces that you're using. And I'm just going in here with my spatula and just applying a little more, and then we're going to get the frontal ready and let it process for about an hour. And I always like to lay my frontal or closure, I call it bleach down. So I always have the bleach portion sitting on the foil, and I have it process bleaching down. And this here is after it's been processed, and I'm getting ready to rinse it out. And I'm just going to part it a couple of times and just show you how the knots look. They should be like this light brown, and it should almost look like scalp already, and that's how you know that the frontal is ready to be washed out. And like I said previously in the video, I let this frontal process for about an hour, and this is a raw Indian frontal. So it does depend on the hair that you're using. So this particular hair bleaches pretty quickly, but I like for it to look like scalp, I shall say. So I let it stay on there for about an hour, but it does vary. And I'm going in with my neutralizing shampoo by Isoplus and my Shimmer lights to actually tone my knots after I neutralize them. But first we're going in and washing off that bleach just to make sure that we get all of that off, and then you just want to make sure you rinse it thoroughly to make sure all of that bleach is gone before you start to apply that neutralizing shampoo. And now we will apply our neutralizing shampoo here. And I just like to, I don't have a specific measurement for this, and I just like to apply a generous amount and just soak the full frontal with it just to make sure we're neutralizing those knots after that 1 hour process. As you can see, I did apply that neutralizing shampoo twice. I rinsed it out and then applied it again and then rinsed it out. And now I'm just going in with my Shimmer lights, and I'm just going to use this to tone the knots. And you're also going to see me go in with the Joico, and I call this like a small pre-rinse, and I'm just combining those two together. And after I combine those and lather that up a little bit, I'm just going to go right in and rinse it out. And then you'll see me go back in with only my Shimmer lights and let that process for about 15 to 20 minutes. And I also make sure I get a good lather on that that Shimmer lights, and it's just to prevent any staining, purple staining on the lace. I make sure that there's no purple color that's left on the lace. I make sure everything is lathered, and like I said, I let that sit for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then I just go in and rinse the Shimmer lights off. And as you can see, it's already looking like scalp before we even apply this frontal to our head. So I'm very satisfied with these results, and this is what your frontal or closure should look like. You should not be able to see like any of the harsh knots or anything. And now we just go in with our TRESemme Moisture Rich Conditioner and just put that on our frontal and let that process. And I usually let this process for about 25 to 30 minutes because it went through that hour-long bleaching process. So you definitely want to condition your frontal or closure just to get that moisture back in there and to make sure that it's not damaged or anything like that, because of course we also have to blow dry it and everything, so that's more heat and processes. So you definitely want to make sure you condition it properly and let that conditioner sit on there for about 25 to 30 minutes. And sometimes you can do an hour, it doesn't hurt, but I usually just do about 25 to 30 minutes. After the process is done, this is what your frontal or closure should look like after it's dried, and it looks just like a scalp.